So I'm going to be talking about holographic visual effects and like motion graphics because recently that's what I've got into and it's something I'm looking to actually get into because for me it's fun to do, but it's something I spend a lot of time just making because it's just interesting. Now with hologram design, you see it mainly in like futuristic films based around future technology, space, and in like the MCU where they have like Iron Man, because there's a lot of technology in that. But you don't really see it anywhere else, but you see like visual effects in like plenty of different films. It's a very normal thing to have in films and TV shows nowadays. With visual effects in films, it actually allows directors and storytellers to tell stories how they exactly want to. So if they have a film where they want to do something with the sky, or a film where they want to add characters, they actually can because they have that equipment and editing like softwares to actually do that. With visual effects you can cover things as like creating entirely virtual shots, which is what I've done last semester when I created a film based on like space. I managed to do CGI space, so I created the earth, the stars and like the sky and all of that, and it allowed me to tell the story with more depth of like space, and that's got something to do with that. You can change background, create background, adding actors, characters or creatures, changing actors, adding objects or props, removing objects, obscuring objects and specialised speed changes. Now you need a bunch of skills in visual effects, these being technical and transferable or like personal skills. With technical skills you need Adobe Creative Suite. You need to know how to use that because it's the key thing in actually virtual visual effects and like hologram design and all of that, because you need to know how to use Illustrator and Photoshop to actually design, but then After Effects to be able to animate, actually make everything move and fit it into the actual film. You need to know how to use you can know how to use UX wireframes, prototyping, user interface design, JavaScript, Maya and 3D modelling. At the moment I'm also looking into like 3D modelling and trying to find softwares to create that, because adding that into my skill set will allow me to actually make more 3D objects, and instead of just making something flat and turning it, I'll be able to actually add the 3D elements and then use that. For the transferable skills you need creativity, communication, collaboration, research, organisation, attention to detail and problem solving. This is key because from experience I know that I've created things and it hasn't really worked out. I've created things and it hasn't worked out, so you need to actually, attention to detail is very, like, you need to have that. Because for example with like the space thing I made again, when I created the earth it looked kind of flat and like cartoony, but then I realised that one thing I missed was just adding clouds to the earth layer. This then made it look a lot more realistic, which is just a tiny thing, but yeah, it actually makes a huge difference. Route into visual effects. For visual effects specifically, you actually need a degree, whether it be CGI, 3D modelling, just anything like that, you need a degree. But with hologram design, which is what I specifically want to go into, it can be motion graphics. Like, it can be classed as that due to the fact it's images, text and animation. Now for motion graphics, you don't need a qualification, but it's better if you do have one, because you're then more qualified and it just makes you look a lot better. My route is that after uni I'm going to just create more graphics, work on my skills, try and make it look as close to perfect or professional quality as I can actually make it. Then I'm going to make a bunch of short films, like in different styles with different graphics, that allow me to show my skill set and show the range that I can actually create. Then I'm going to try to find some low budget films where people are making like little graphics, or little films with like graphics that they need that they can't find someone to create, because then I can build my portfolio and like we have to build my portfolio. Then I'm going to look at higher budget movies because that'll boost me a lot. And when talking to Andy, he said that in the UK there's not much specifically hologram design. So if I perfected that or got as close to perfect as possible, I'd be very, people would look for me to work with them. Now when it comes to designers, these are three that I had the biggest interest in. Jay Hansen, he's specifically hologram design. He's worked on a bunch of like Marvel films, like especially Iron Man, and a bunch of other films. Anna Fraser, I actually got to talk to her. She's worked on Iron Man 3 and like more films as well, but she's, as you can see, she does a bunch of different like, effects, different like things. But at the moment she's actually working at a school in Australia. Joel Collins, he works on like Black Mirror and a lot of other things as well, but he has a company which goes with him on everything, and they've won a bunch of like, awards. When talking to Anna Fraser, I asked about creating graphics and what I should look at, and the first thing she actually said was planning, because I realised that when I was creating them, I wasn't actually planning, I didn't do any of that. I just thought of what I wanted, then I made it. But after speaking to her, I actually started to draw things up, like draw how things are going to move, and this made everything a lot easier, because when it came to animating, it wasn't as difficult because I knew where everything was moving and I didn't have to plan like as in depth right there and then. But the four main things we spoke about was like what I needed to do when actually designing. And she said I need to take into account the story, the performance, the set, and design and animation. When she was talking about story, it's basically the story has to relate to the graphic. If it doesn't, then it's just a random graphic there. So if you have like the film set in 1920 and there's a random hologram, it doesn't make sense. But if then you add the element of time travelling and someone who's come back with a bunch of technology, it makes a lot more sense as to why it's there. Then performance. When I worked on my film last semester, I realised that performance is important. You have to know exactly how the person's going to move, what they're going to do, where they're walking, the space around them, because you need to know where you're going to put the actual graphics. Because if you don't, then it's hard to actually just add things there, because say if someone's standing and you add something, the 3D layer that you add, it might actually go to somewhere on the screen which doesn't work out. Then thirdly, she talks about the set, which is quite obvious. You need to know what's around, like you need to know where they're moving, where all the props, like the tables, chairs, you need to know where everything actually is. Otherwise, you can't insert like. But I think she said to me that when she worked on Iron Man, because she'd done the war room scene, she had to create holograms that go all the way around because it's like a crime scene war. Now, she had to make everything so it's in a certain layer where the camera goes, and that's how she done that. The fourth thing was the design and animation. You need to have knowledge of actually designing and animating, because when you design, you can make something, but if you don't know how to animate, you can't actually add it in like properly, because then you're just gonna have random animations, especially if you're just moving like the position. It doesn't work like that. You have to move everything, like rotation, all the 3D layers, and yeah, that's basically what we spoke about. So that's what I'm looking to get into. I haven't really got a 5-year plan, but I've got my plan for like the next 3 years, like done. But that's what I've got.